On this channel, I mostly cover safety and security, but today I won't be talking about burglars, car theft, or house fires. Instead, we're touching on something much more common and much more sinister. Domestic violence and intimate partner abuse affects 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men in the US. And that's just the tip of the statistics iceberg. My point is that this is a disturbingly common problem because intimate partner abuse comes in many forms. For deeper insight, we talk to an expert.
So my name is Harlow Kedzie. I have my master's in social work, and I've had that for about 2 years, but I've worked in the field of social services for probably about 8 years, during which time I've worked in domestic violence shelters, and during which time I've also been able to become a survivor of domestic violence myself.
This topic is tough, and many of you watching have already experienced this or know someone who has. But abuse thrives on silence, and in order to break these patterns, we have to break that silence. Today, I'll share some tips for you on what to do to help a loved one who may be in an abusive relationship, how to breach the subject, and what you can do to help them. If you've never encountered abuse in your own relationships, you may wonder why someone would tolerate this kind of treatment. But the stories we see on TV and movies are extreme examples, and it turns out intimate partner abuse comes in many shades.
You do. You see it all the time with movies and theatrics and shows. They show the physical violence, and that is a big part of it. That is seen a lot in intimate partner violence. But the other types of abuse that you see is the psychological abuse. So if you're familiar with the term gaslighting, so making someone feel like they don't know what they're talking about, or they are quote unquote crazy for thinking certain things. So that psychological abuse happens quite often. There's this coercion that you see. So coercing people into doing things. There's the financial abuse. There's the use of children so if you're in an intimate partner relationship and you two share children, saying, I'm going to do this with the children if you leave me. That's something that I don't think a lot of people are always familiar that actually is a form of abuse. Of course, the verbal abuse. So telling someone that, you're not worthy, you're stupid, you're this, you're that. And that kind of goes hand in hand with that emotional abuse that we were talking about earlier. And then, of course, you have the sexual abuse that can fall within that intimate partner violence. So and that also goes hand in hand with the coercion piece, right? So coercing someone to have sex with them, even though you're in a relationship, it doesn't always mean that there is that consent piece. So abuse can look very different, and it can involve all those things. It can involve some of those things, and at different times.
Physical abuse is still a serious problem, but most situations don't start that way. It's often difficult for survivors to see patterns while they're in the middle of it.
Well, like I mentioned, I'm a survivor of abuse, and I had my bachelor's degree in psychology and was in my social work program when I was being abused. And so it's not that I didn't know that I was, but I chose to almost ignore it because I didn't want to acknowledge that was in fact happening.
It can take a long time for someone to recognize that their relationship is abusive, and even longer to take action. Leaving a loved one, even after they've mistreated you, is full of complicated feelings, as well as financial, family, and cultural barriers.
To kind of sever those conflicting ideologies in your head, because you do love the person. And what I've told people is you might not be able to stop loving them. You can't shut that off. It's that radical acceptance piece that we talk about in therapy sometimes, is you have to be able to get to a point where you can accept the fact that yes, you have love in your heart for this person, but that love has almost been turned on you as well, and you are now at a point where you are being really hurt by that. So how do you slowly and gradually separate those?
That is where concerned friends, family, and coworkers like you come in. The roots of abuse start small and grow from there. I asked Harlow a few red flags to look for.
When your partner maybe doesn't trust you to go and talk to your friends alone, or they're asking you, hey, I want to know where you are, especially if that's earlier on, because everybody has a right to their own life and to do what they want. And even though you're in a relationship, if your partner is saying, you need to tell me where you are, you need to tell me what you're going, I need to know what you're doing, that's a sign. And it might not always be malicious, but it's something to keep an eye out on for sure. Another sign is really focus on how you're feeling. If you're with somebody and they are saying, you are this, they're putting a label on you, a label that maybe you don't agree with, or that you're kind of sitting there questioning, why are they saying that I don't know what I'm doing, or that that's not right? Who are they to say that? And really sit there and question, why are they saying that, and how is that making me feel? So those are some of the initial signs, because usually physical violence isn't the first thing that you see in a relationship. It escalates up to that point. So a lot of times what you will see in the beginning is that more emotional abuse, that verbal abuse.
So your loved one seems isolated and distant, or their partner seems controlling and overbearing. How do you even bring up the topic to see if they need help? Here is what Harlow suggests.
It's a tricky situation, right? Because as a family or friend, you don't want to put your loved one who's in that abusive relationship in more danger. And it seems kind of common sense, but the first thing that you can do is to really just ask someone in a private space. So don't be asking your loved one in front of...
Not at the family barbecue or church or anything.
Say, hey, you want to grab coffee sometime? And, when you're alone, ask them, hey, is everything okay? You can start with a more general question. I'll say in my experience, people say, yeah, it's fine. And if you're getting that response and you still suspect that something is wrong, be verbal about it. Say, I want to just ask you a question, and it's because I'm concerned about you. Are you being hurt or mistreated within your relationship? And you still might get a no, you might get pushed back. But then at that point, what a family or a friend can say is, I'm here for you. If you ever want to talk, if you ever need a safe space, I'm here. It's important to not push somebody to tell you about if they are being mistreated, because if you push somebody when they're not ready to talk about this abuse, if it is happening, you as the family or friend may be put into this unfair box of not being supportive or pushing someone. And you want to be able to allow that space for someone to come to you when they need you. So really emphasizing that.
The key point is that you listen to them and don't push the subject. Simply opening the door may be enough to start, but letting your loved one know that you're there as a steady resource can help them down the road. Instead of suggesting that they leave or pulling details from them, express your concern over their safety and well-being.
I can speak on my own experience as well as the individuals that I've served through my career, is that for family and friends to say, hey, you're missing a lot of work, or hey, you're not returning my phone calls as much. I just noticed that there's something different going on. And that way, you as a family or friend are telling someone that you're observing these different patterns or behaviors, and someone who's in an abusive relationship might not even be thinking about how those patterns or their lifestyle is changing, because they're just in such a mode to protect themselves. So having family or friends while leaving the door open, not pushing them, and just saying, hey, I just noticed that A, B, and C is going on, or you're doing A, B, and C. Have you noticed that? And then that could open up a conversation, because it does take a while.
The dynamics of an abusive relationship are complicated, and leaving someone that they love, even when the relationship was toxic, is really difficult. And all of that comes with feelings of shame and guilt. Basically, once your friend or loved one starts to open up, let them talk. listen without judgment and avoid saying things like, "you should leave," or "I'd never let someone do that to me." These phrases often do more harm than good. Just like bringing the subject to light, you'll likely have many, many conversations with your friend about this topic, and that's normal. During my research for this video, I came across the term safety plan over and over again. So of course, I had to ask.
For domestic violence, the safety plan means that if and when you are ready to leave a relationship, let's plan that out so that you can do it in the safest way possible. So safety plan can look, it typically covers points of, if you leave, where would you go? Would you go to a friend's house? Would you go to police? It covers technology safety. So, what passwords are you using? Or make sure you're changing your passwords. What applications on your phone are you going to be able to have access to? It involves, children. If you leave the relationship, who's going to pick up your children, things like that. So it involves kind of planning for how are you going to leave? When are you going to leave? And what are you going to do when you leave, so that you can minimize as much as possible the risk of your perpetrator, your abuser finding you, retaliating against you.
This is where the stakes get higher. Leaving an abusive relationship can be very dangerous. According to author, TED speaker, and survivor Leslie Morgan Steiner, 70% of domestic violence murders happen after the victim has left. Even without the threat of physical harm, stalking, financial drain, and long court-intensive processes can follow leaving an abusive relationship. That's why it's smart to have a safety plan that covers as many bases as possible.
And I think that is a part of that ongoing conversation. Once you have started to let someone know that you're observing different things, you have the door open for them, it's to say, hey, if you need a safe space, my house is available or my place is available. Asking someone, hey, are you in a place where you feel like you want to just plant safety for if and when you leave? A lot of times too, and this is something that I would tell a lot of individuals I worked with, was in the safety plan, you have, we used to call it a hurricane bag because I lived in Florida, so we had hurricanes. So it talked about having a hurricane bag ready for if and when you leave. And so that would maybe include some personal identification, your birth certificate, a quick change of clothes if you wanted to have another track phone. I don't know if they have those anymore, but one of those small,
those easy pay by the minute phones. Yeah.
Right. So having kind of a hurricane bag like that. And so where the family or friend can come into handy is maybe the family or friend can say, hey, can I help you create a bag that maybe you could store at my house so that if you needed to get away, you have something there. And I think that is a very easy thing to do. You have to help someone just make this bag, you have it there, that someone can come to your house and get it.
Yeah, and I imagine something as simple as I can pick your kids up from school if you need me to, or use my Wi-Fi, or use my computer if you need to look up some help or something like that.
Absolutely. Or just be hey, let's meet for coffee, and maybe at coffee we can just look at where you can go, or let's just do something like that, and picking out the pieces one at a time.
Like this entire process, forming a safety plan is a slow one, but you can find resources through mobile apps, printouts, and hotlines that can help you get started and keep track of everything. Keeping a diary of incidents and photos can also help you build a case for any future action. And loaning your own digital resources can be a huge help to your friend or loved one during this time. As Harlow told me, technology can often work against those trying to escape.
I've definitely seen so much more of the technology abuse. So, especially when women in particular are leaving these abusive relationships, it happened to myself as well, is that their partners are hacking into their emails. They're able to make phone calls to them while masking their actual phone number. So it looks like it's coming
Right.
from phone. You know, dating apps, the catfishing is just such a, it's such a phenomenon now. And so, you know, abusers, they know their partners well, right? You know, you're in this relationship, you can probably guess what someone is going to like in a person. So there's this catfishing on dating apps. And so I would definitely say, yeah, I've seen it change a lot in the last several years with technology becoming more and more advanced and pervasive.
The thing that you don't see in Lifetime movies or TV shows about abuse survivors is that this process takes a long time. As Harlow put it,
on average, it takes a woman particularly 7 times to try and leave a relationship before she actually leaves.
Each of the steps we mentioned in just this short video could take months or years. There can be backtracking, obstacles, and worse along the way too. Because this is such a long process, it's important to be patient with your loved one. But you should also remember your own boundaries. If it becomes too much, draw a line that works for you. Setting time limits or scheduling these conversations gives them space and you room to listen. For those going through it, Harlow has some parting advice.
You know, it's very easy to become isolated in these types of relationships. And so if you can even find just one person that you trust to know what's going on, find that one person.
Safety isn't just setting up a home security system or checking smoke alarms. Yeah, those are important, but it's also about being there for loved ones when they need it most. I hope this video can help you get started making someone else's life safer. I've dropped resources to the hotline, statistics on abuse, links for some helpful apps, and sheets for safety plan checklists below. So if you know someone right now who is experiencing intimate partner abuse, check those links out and open the door. And if you've had experiences of your own that you want to share with us, drop a comment below. Thanks for watching and stay safe.